I stared at the letter in my hand, feeling my blood begin to boil. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall of these people was truly something to behold. The Maple Glen Homeowners Association was demanding that I remove my boat from my lake within 48 hours or face a $500 per day fine. They even threatened to have it towed at my expense. I couldn't help but laugh as I read the condescending language dripping with artificial authority. These pompous bureaucrats had no idea who they were messing with. They had been happily using my family's lake for years without permission, and now they were trying to dictate terms to me on my own property. Oh, this was going to be interesting. My name is Brandon Hayes, and up until 6 months ago, I was just another overworked software engineer grinding away in Silicon Valley. I spent a decade building a cybersecurity startup for financial institutions. When a major tech conglomerate offered to buy us out for a sum with more zeros than I ever thought I'd see, I decided it was time for a change. At 40, I was financially secure and burned out. I craved peace, quiet, and freedom. That's when I remembered the lake house. Hayes Lake had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather, a commercial fisherman turned conservationist, bought the 50-acre lake and surrounding land in the 1950s. He built a modest cabin and spent his retirement years fishing, writing, and teaching kids about nature. I spent countless summers there, learning to fish, listening to his stories. Water is life, he'd tell me. Not just for fish, but for all of us. Never let anyone tell you profit matters more than nature. Those words stuck with me. Even as I built my company, those memories never faded. My father kept the property but rarely used it. When both he and my grandfather passed, the lake and cabin became mine. I hadn't been there in years, too caught up in tech life. But now it was the perfect refuge. I renovated the cabin, updated the plumbing, added internet, but kept the rustic charm. Mornings were spent with coffee on the dock, afternoons on projects, evenings watching the sunset from my grandfather's aluminum fishing boat. Stress melted away. It was perfect. Until the HOA stepped in. That morning had started like any other. I took my coffee down to the dock where the 16-foot aluminum boat was tied up. It wasn't fancy, just practical. My grandfather had used it for decades. As I walked past, I noticed an obnoxious neon orange notice taped to it. Violation notice. It claimed my boat didn't meet aesthetic standards and had to be removed. At first, I thought it was a prank. But back at the cabin, I found a letter in the mailbox, official HOA letterhead, signed by Gregory Larson, president. It was real. Right then, my phone rang. It was Jim Barker, my nearest neighbor and one of the few people I'd gotten to know since moving in. Jim, a retired carpenter in his 70s, had known my grandfather. We bonded over fishing and our shared distaste for rules that made no sense. "Morning, Brandon," he said with a chuckle. "Looks like the welcome wagon paid you a visit." I told him about the notice. "Those HOA vultures have been getting bolder," Jim said. "Started when they built that luxury subdivision on the North Shore a decade ago. Your grandfather would have run them off with a slingshot. Apparently, they'd been using my lake for years, tournaments, club meetings, barbecues. All without permission. Curious, I checked the HOA's website. Sure enough, there were photos of their annual Elite Anglers tournament held on my Lake Me property. Tents, catered food, even a floating dock. The next one was scheduled for the coming weekend. $5,000 prize. No mention of me. No request for permission. I called my old college friend, Rachel Monroe, now an environmental lawyer. "Wait, you own the lake?" she asked. "Yup. Full deed, water rights. And they're telling you to move your boat? That's not just wrong. That's illegal." Rachel came up that weekend to help review my documents. We confirmed everything clear, private ownership. I installed security cameras to document any unauthorized use. It wasn't just about the boat anymore. This was trespassing. I attended the next HOA meeting at their community center. Gregory Larson stood at the podium droning about mailbox standards and flowerbed dimensions. Then he brought up the lake. "We've received reports of an unauthorized boat," he said. "All watercraft must be registered with the HOA." I raised my hand. "Who owns the lake?" I asked. Larson looked annoyed. "The lake is a community resource managed by the HOA. So you have the deed? Or a county lease?" "There are historical arrangements," he snapped. Next question. After the meeting, I introduced myself to Gerald Finch, head of the Elite Anglers Club. "Hayes? You're that Hayes." Yup. This lake's been in my family since 1953. Well, welcome back, he said cautiously. Maybe you'd be interested in joining the club. We have exclusive access. To my lake? He blinked. The next day, my boat was gone. Towed by the HOA, a violation notice left in its place. I called the sheriff's office. They said it was a civil dispute. That weekend, Rachel and I reviewed everything. We uncovered their real plan. The HOA had submitted development plans for a lakeside resort. Condos, marina, golf course, all on my land. They'd forged a narrative of ownership, assuming the property was forgotten. My return ruined that. We waited. Let the tournament proceed. Our cameras captured everything. On the day of the event, more than 40 people crowded the East Shore. Boats launched. Barbecues blazed. Investors toured the site with Larson, who bragged about HOA control. Rachel filed an emergency injunction. The judge ruled in our favor. Accompanied by a sheriff's deputy, we walked onto the property. This is private land, the deputy announced. You must leave. The crowd panicked. Gerald raged. Larson shouted. Rachel calmly handed him the court order. This lake belongs to Brandon Hayes, she said. The HOA has no rights here. The investors fled. Larson sputtered. You have no idea who you're messing with. Actually, I replied. You don't. The fallout was swift. The local paper ran Rachel's story. Residents were furious. Where had their dues gone? Who had lied to them? Larson disappeared. Turns out his real name was Gregory Larkin, a disbarred broker from Texas with a history of fraud. With Rachel's help, we established the Hayes Lake Conservation Trust. Residents could enjoy the lake with permits. We created a small public park. Fishing continued this time legally. Gerald left. The HOA was gutted and restructured. Jim, my neighbor, now chairs the conservation committee. Every morning, I take my boat out, the same one they tried to tow. I fish. I drink coffee. I remember my grandfather. He taught me that nature wasn't about profit. It was about stewardship. And now, thanks to him, and a little legal firepower, Hayes Lake is peaceful once more. And it's going to stay that way.